I think the thing about traditional tales which is so appealing is that they are universal.
But what you're trying to do is see the world through the eyes of a child.
The plot's very important, and actually the two should be inextricably linked.
What did you get really sad about? What frightened you? What made you laugh?
When you're writing a picture book, you're more dependent on your inspiration, and yet it's very exacting. And because it's a shorter form of book, every single word must count. The language and the pattern is so important. It's really, in a way, more like writing a poem or a piece of music.
I think as a children's author, what you're trying to do is see the world through the eyes of a child. So think back to when you were 5, 10, 13. What did you really care about? What did you get really sad about? What frightened you? What made you laugh? A good tool to look at your childhood is, of course, photos. And I've got some photos here from my childhood. This is a particularly memorable one. This is when my older sister, Julie, dressed me up in this mauve bridesmaid's dress, put this fur hat on my head and these sandals, and took me down the street where we lived. And this dog, I remember, this golden retriever, was called Honey. And we were obsessed with this dog. We didn't have a dog. And to get it to come to our house, I remember we got a packet of rich tea biscuits and we laid them down on the road so it would follow us all the way home, because we really wanted the dog to come and live with us. But obviously, this is pretty unusual. The fact that I'm wearing a dress and I'm so young. And so this sort of partly inspired The Boy in the Dress. But the dog story, it's a tiny thing, it's a tiny detail, but you know, it might spark something for you in your imagination when you look back at a photo like that. You think, oh yeah, that's something only a child would really do, lay out biscuits on the road. This unusual one again. Oh, there I am, in female clothing again, this time in a bikini. And I think this was at a Girl Guide camp because my mum was a brown owl and she's dressed as Paddington Bear and I think I'm Marilyn Monroe. So, you know, might be something interesting there in terms of, I don't know, being on a camping trip. A fancy dress party is something that you do quite a lot as a kid. And I've got some pictures of me at school. This is me here. And I'm in this wedding dress with a wig from a jumble sale. And I'm playing Queen Henrietta Maria in a little operetta, because I went to a bit of a posh school. And it's called All the King's Men. And so there's me in a dress again. You can see that was a common theme in my childhood. So it's kind of no surprise that I would write a book called The Boy in the Dress. But all of these pictures bring back memories in one way or another. This is me thinking I was actually quite handsome when I was in the CCF at school, because this is my naval uniform. And that's me looking rather pretentious in a school play, playing Pride in Dr. Faustus. So these pictures, they might spark all kinds of memories. You might remember, oh, I was quite shy when I was a kid, or I was a bit of a show-off. I mean, it's actually fun to reminisce, isn't it? But they really put you in touch with what you were thinking and feeling as a child. And that's something you really need to think about if you're writing a story for children.
A lot of people, I find, look down on plots somehow as something a bit mechanical, whereas characters are kind of lauded. I'm talking more perhaps now about adults' books and children's. You often get authors saying, oh, my characters just took over, they ran away with me. And I think, well, I think you should be quite in control of the whole thing. Your characters should be believable, but the plot's very important, and actually the two should be inextricably linked. If you think of Jane Austen, people are always praising her characters, which are wonderful, and her style and the way she kind of really wrote in minute detail about the world she knew so well. You don't so often get people praising her plots, and I think her plots are wonderful, and that's what makes the book so readable, actually. But what's so good about them is they're seamless, they're not clunky. You only really notice a plot when it's clunky. I think I'm not alone in finding the creation of an intriguing, satisfying, unpredictable plot the most difficult part of writing.
So you might want to start your book with your lead character or a setting, or you might just want some kind of really arresting moment. Now, years ago when I was at school, so 35 years ago, we had a reading competition, and a boy got up and he read an extract from a Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book. I can't remember which one, but he began with a scream. So he began his reading going, and I remember thinking, that is absolutely brilliant, because immediately we all sat up and we all took notice. Why is someone screaming? And of course, it was really funny. And it's amazing what you remember, because 35 years later, I'm writing The Midnight Gang, and I think, okay, I'm going to begin a book with a scream. Ah! Screamed the boy. The most monstrous face he'd ever seen was peering down at him. It was the face of a man, but it was completely lopsided. One side was larger than it should have been, and the other was smaller. The face smiled as if to calm the boy down, only to reveal a set of broken and rotten teeth. This made the boy even more scared than before. Ah! He screamed again. Well, we don't know who the boy is. We'll find out that later. Actually, at this point in the story, the boy is concussed, so he doesn't even remember his own name. And we don't know who this man is who's peering down at him. He seems sinister. Well, I want you to think he's sinister at first. He actually turns out to be one of the book's heroes. So what I'm trying to do here is just trying to create a really intriguing situation. And I'm trying to get into the story as late as possible. Now, the boy in the story has been whacked in the head by a cricket ball at school, but I don't bother showing you all of that because I think, so what? I don't want to set up the cricket pitch. I don't want that to be the opening of the book. But someone screaming at the very beginning of a book, I feel like that's a lot more interesting. So I'm trying to start as late as I can in the story and with something really arresting. And the thing is, you're writing for children. Children have got a million other things that they could be doing other than reading a book. I mean, when I was a kid, there was 3 or 4 TV channels, and there wasn't really any computer games and things like that. So there wasn't a lot to take you away from books. Now children have, I don't really need to tell you, but they have the internet, they have computer games, they have hundreds and hundreds of TV channels. So to actually get them to sit down and read a book, the book has got to begin in a really exciting way. But of course, before it reaches the hands of your child reader, your book is probably going to be read by a literary agent or a book editor at a publishing house. And you can't reasonably expect them to get through the whole book if the first page is not engaging and exciting. They may give up after page 1 if you haven't grabbed their attention. So it is so important to make sure that opening is as exciting, intriguing, and arresting as possible.
What I really love about the whole genre of picture books is their incredible variety. I think there's more variety within picture books than any other type of book I can think of for adults or for children. I've got a couple of examples here. You can maybe see I've got a whole table full of books from my own collection, some of mine and some by other people, plus some much newer ones, which I'm going to be referring to in this lesson and throughout the whole course. Well, first of all, a picture book can tell a story with pictures. And it could be a story of everyday life, like this one, Dogger. This is a very old, tatty copy of Dogger by Shirley Hughes. It's so tatty because it's been so well loved. And it's a story about a little boy who loses his cuddly toy dog. Another one, which I really love, which is about everyday life, is this one, So Much, by Trish Cook and illustrated by the wonderful Helen Oxenbury. I'll just read you a little bit of that one to give you the flavour. This is just a story of a day in the life, really. There's a mother and a baby, and the doorbell keeps going. And at first, it's Auntie Bibba. Auntie Bibba came inside with her arms out wide, 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 and one big, big smile. "Ooh," she said, "I want to squeeze him. I want to squeeze that baby. I want to squeeze him so much." And then the next ring at the doorbell is the uncle who wants to kiss the baby so much. And there's a granny, and then there's a lovely cousin who wants to fight the baby so much, not just play fighting. So there's that lovely pattern to the language in this book. But it's just a story of some ordinary people and their ordinary everyday life.
I think it's the best idea to make your stories as timeless as possible. Could be the past, could be the present, it could be the future. It doesn't really matter. I think timelessness really works well with children's stories because it means it doesn't alienate anyone reading. It's not like someone's reading it now and the book's set 10 years ago and there's lots of references they don't understand. It also means that over time, the book is never going to get old. Now, I came from writing television comedy, and in a show like Little Britain, sometimes you needed very up-to-the-minute references to make a joke work. For example, there's a scene where Vicky Pollard is confronted by her social worker who's asking what has happened to Vicky Pollard's baby, and she says, "I swapped it for a Westlife CD." Now, I swapped it for a CD. Well, it's kind of a joke. Wouldn't land as well as a Westlife CD. Now, obviously, Westlife are still around in some form, but they're not the band of the moment that they were when we wrote that sketch. So I carried on this idea from my first children's book, The Boy in the Dress. I thought, you need up-to-date references because it makes the writing seem authentic, and also you might need them for a joke. So, for example, there's quite a long reference to the TV show Trisha. Now, Trisha is not on TV anymore. And in fact, if I think about it, a 10 or 12-year-old reading The Boy in the Dress now would have absolutely no idea what Trisha was, what the show was about. And that's a failing. And I wish I hadn't done that in retrospect. Because, of course, you want your work to be as timeless as possible. You want it to be passed from generation to generation. Something that Roald Dahl did so well is set his book in timeless settings.